And we will go ahead and get started. Aloha, hello, and how is everyone? Today is January 27th, 2023, and this is the Fielding Coaching Community of Practice Aloha Friday event. I am Kimberly Akuris, and it's nice to be back at Aloha Friday after our holiday break. Thank you for joining us. We have a wonderful offering for you today, and I am excited to get started. I would like to introduce first to you Shauna Pote, the current administrator of Fielding's virtual student and alumni commons, known as Fielding Connect. Shauna's passion is student success and its implications on the use of technology toward community and productivity. Shauna lives in Philadelphia with her husband, 3 grown children, 6 Angora bunnies, and 5 cats. Shauna will be discussing the use of the updated server, some of its new functions, and how you can join. Shortly after, Dr. Jimmy Parker will be joining us to discuss the topic, do collectives really evolve through stages towards greater complexity? How would we know? How might we apply the stages of adult development to groups and teams? So you do not want to miss this. So let me welcome Shauna Pote and ask, what is this Fielding Connect?
What a great question. Thanks, Kim. Hi, everybody. So I was here a few months ago before the holidays, introducing what at the time was going by the name, the unofficial Fielding Graduate University Community Server. It launched in August of 2022 and was just an experiment. In that time, since that time, it has gained the green light from both our president, Katrina Rogers, and our new provost, Dr. Wendy Williams, and growth has really started ramping up. So I think at the time I spoke last to the CCOP for Aloha Friday, we were at maybe 30 members, and we're now at 97, having just gained our VP of DEI, Dr. Allison Davis White Eyes, today, as a matter of fact. So what I don't have any slides. What I want to do is just show you the new space and some of the conversations that are happening, and make an offering to EBC and CCOP to consider joining and being in community with others from Fielding. So I'm going to share my screen. Which one do I want? I want this one. Share. So can everyone see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. So Fielding Connect is one of many Discord servers that are out in the Discord space. It's basically our own little slice of the internet, where it's by invitation only, and all the members are from Fielding in one aspect or another. We are currently at 81 members from SLS, which includes EBC and CCOP members. We've got 3 from psychology as they start to become aware of us. A quarter of our membership are doctors. They've already graduated out of the program, so it's proving to be a fertile ground for our alumni to have conversations with each other, as well as being in community with those who are coming up through the ranks. You can see the rest of our makeup here. Our peak online represents how many people have been online simultaneously, which is currently at 19. That's a lot of people for such a small server to be on the system at the same time. Yeah, that's actually a pretty significant percentage. The server's broken up into categories in order to help navigate for conversation. These be minimized, and then any activity or those where new posts are are made. So it helps you to navigate. There are a lot of channels out here. You'll see more on my screen than you would on your own screen because I manage or administer to all of the SLS specific school categories, as well as all of the PSY specific categories. And if we end up having CCOP or EBC specific categories, I would manage those as well. We also have special interest groups for instance, paradigm shifters, which I think many of you have heard of, the Black Student Association, the 3PC groups, the institutional justice groups. We've also got categories for talking about scholarly tools, research topics, different competencies, and of course the off-topic meme channels, which are a stronghold of getting through your PhD program. These are all asynchronous types of communication, just basically posting in a chat. So you can pop in, you can pop out, you read the new posts. You don't necessarily need to be current and online at the same time. So that's all asynchronous. But it also has a synchronous component. So for instance, we've got a coffee group that meets in the mornings, consisting of they're all students heading towards candidacy where they're done their KAs. They're not really in community with anyone because they're not in classes, but there's a connection here in the co-working rooms where it's video and audio enabled, and so it's very live. You can see we've had a member just join in the lounge, probably looking for someone to co-work with. We do a lot of co-working in these spaces. It's very easy to get an immediate, quick bit of help from anyone who is online currently, which is why that peak online number is important, because you don't have to wait for help. You don't have to send an email. You can talk to somebody who is online immediately to talk through a problem or share screens or what have you. Everything is managed through roles. So based on the role you have, that's what you'll see. And you won't see anything that you're not meant to. What else? So asynchronous, synchronous, video, audio. We do have, I'll share this with you so that y'all can get a snapshot of it. If you want to join, here's the invite link. It's https://discord.gg/fieldingconnect. 2-hour special presenter tonight, Dr. Jimmy Parker. I'll leave that up for a hot second. Everybody can grab it. We good? Everybody's got it? Okay. One of the other things that this is really useful for is promoting events. So for instance, I just entered into this system. Where is it? Nope, let's not put it there. Let's go down to the events section. So under our events channel, general events, I just entered in Dr. Parker's 8-week learning series about stages of development for groups and organizations. So every week there will be a reminder to everyone in this community that this event is happening. It has all the relevant information, including the link to register. And it's a useful, again, everybody is in the same space. We're all in the same community. You don't have to go to different applications for all of these functions. You can interact in the ways that work best for you. I invite everyone to join this space and be in community with your colleagues from fielding.
When I was in the EBC program, I used to have problems finding victims. Coaching clients for my hours. This might be a great avenue to find coaching clients. That just occurred to me.
Yep, totally. Any questions from folks who are here? So everyone's going to join?
Yeah, can you put the link to how to join in chat?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, I'll do you one better. Lisa, is it Lisa?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'll do one better, and I will include not only the link. Let me stop sharing here. Stop share. But there's also a document that will walk you through getting online and setting yourself up. So I'll put that in there as well.
And then my question is, I join things online and then I don't go back to them, and then I have to remember to go back. And then the other thing is, what things should we not be posting? And I ask that because I have to tell you in honesty, our fielding.
Ooh, I lost.
I don't know if it's on Facebook or fielding. Oh, you don't have me anymore?
Can you repeat that, Lisa?
Sure. I'm gonna change rooms because clearly I'm having some audio and visual. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm gonna change rooms as I disappear. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So I was saying that one of my little pet peeves is that sometimes people post things that I personally don't think are appropriate for our fielding social media, so to speak. Mm-hmm. So that's just like my little thing. So as I look at that, I'm wondering, I'm looking for coaching clients too, Kimberly. I'm interested in people who are interested in my research, not my particular, but research topics that interest me. If I'm looking for work, are all those topics, is there a rules and regs to how we interact?
It's an excellent question. As the sole administrator right now, I'm the person that you would direct them to. As we grow, there may be a need for other moderators and administrators to the space. But for right now, any of those types of questions, first, if you have them, we can talk about it. If, for instance, there's a desire, I don't own this community. This community is being co-created. Sure. And so if there's a desire for members of the community to have, for instance, a channel that allows you to put your work contact details, the types of services you offer, et cetera, into the space, then, that's something you would propose to me. I would put out to the general community, or you could put it out to the general community. Hey, would this be welcome, not welcome, et cetera. And then based on community response, we can, I can create those spaces. So that's my generic answer to all of these types of what's appropriate, not appropriate. I do have a post up there asking folks to honor FERPA and GDPR. So don't post anything about anybody else, only yourself.
Sure.
And it is it's a safe for work space. And I will exercise my administrative right to the ban hammer with various levels of enforcement based on the, coaching first, obviously, because we're all a community of coaches.
And this effort is really about a year old now, Shauna?
No, I built it a year ago, but I didn't launch it. Nobody knew about it until August of last year. So it's not even 6 months old.
Well, that's not bad, Shauna, it's a baby still. So.
And it speaks to filling a need. Because it would, go ahead, Reed, I'm sorry.
Actually, I think my mic is having. I was with Carol earlier, and she was saying I'm having trouble hearing you, so I may be having microphone problems with this particular computer. But I was just going to say just exactly what Lisa just said. This is an effort that's really in its infancy, and so things like the cultural mores and norms, we're still learning. We're still working on it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I just ask those questions because it's one of the things that sticks out for me when I join anything that is social media related, and I'll see something and I'm going, ew, is that really what we need to be reading right now? And then I go, am I posting things that people want to read? So,
well, again, as the administrator, it is entirely appropriate for things that are questionable to be pointed out to me. Those messages can easily be removed. Entire conversations can be removed. People can be coached. Rules can be set up so that can't sneak under the radar, so to speak. I have automated bots that can handle a lot of that if it becomes necessary. So far, I would really encourage you in our forum to please come check it out.
Okay.
Be in community.
Kimberly is asking.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Shauna, so much for the information and for your warmth invitation. It was fantastic. I hope everyone joins. I'm on it every day and have found it so valuable to my scholarship and to my collaboration with colleagues. It's been so helpful. And now I would really like to introduce Dr. Jimmy Parker as our next workshop speaker. Jimmy helps leaders accelerate large-scale organizational and cultural transformations. He loves helping people, teams, and organizations get better. And he hates using formal bios as introductions because they make him uncomfortable. And the audience usually just wants to get on with it anyway. So I hope you like it. Here's Jimmy.
All right. Well, my sort of title that has been used already about 7 times in this meeting still feels a bit awkward, Dr. Parr, and that's not why I did it. So please, my name is Jimmy. I really like that a whole lot. So let's go with Jimmy, if that's okay. I know some of you and not all of you, so it's nice to meet you. I just wrapped up the program in December, and I'm starting to think about how to get my research out into the world. And we do have an 8-part series that I'm preparing for next month. And Kimberly said, hey, why don't you give us a preview? And so I've been scrambling to try to get some content together. And I've got some stuff here for you today. We'll walk through it pretty quickly. In fact, I'm going to give you a little bit of a sort of a choose your own adventure here. I'll give you a kind of an overview of a lot of content that I have, obviously, but we won't have time to go into all of it. So I'd just love to hear what sort of piques your interest. I'm a coach also, like all of you, and I'm a practitioner. I've been working in large organizations for some time. So not just executive coaching, but also in an OD role. So focused on, bringing about large scale change and again, large organizations has been, a primary interest of mine. And that's what sort of led me. I got really into this idea of vertical development, adult development, the stages of vertical development. And there's people who theorize about how those stages of adult development manifest among collectives, among teams, among entire organizations. Can you put an organization's culture and say that it's at stage 5? You pick the model, but stage, one of these stages, and can they grow and exhibit, the characteristics? Can a team grow like that and exhibit the characteristics of a next, higher stage? So I'm going to share my screen and walk through some slides. I'll give you a little bit of an orientation, and then I'm going to pause and see what you would like to dive into a little bit more. So let me share my screen here. I've got oh my gosh, a ton of options. Let me see if I can figure out which one's the right one. Let's see, I think that's it.
You're muted, Jimmy.
That's strange. It muted me when I went to share. You can hear me now, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Huh. Okay. This could be interesting. Let's see. Share tab audio. No, let me turn that off. That might be the trick there. That was the default. No, not that one. Gotta find the right. Here we go. Okay. How about now? You can hear me and you can see the title slide, Assessing the Vertical Development of Organizations. Yes?
No.
Can hear you. This slide is not up yet.
Yeah, it's just a blank screen so far.
Really? Okay. It says I'm sharing. Let's see.
It says double click to enter. No, that's me.
If you only share your application and not your entire screen, or?
Yeah, I mean, I have like 8 to 10 meetings a day, and I share my screen in every one of them. So I'm not sure what's going on here.
Let me make sure. Okay, all participants. Yeah, it says all participants can share.
And he did say you were sharing. It said started sharing.
Well,
we just couldn't see it.
Yeah, let's see. There it is.
There it is.
There we go.
All right, we're cooking with gas. Okay, so vertical development of organizations. What does that even mean? What is that term? So this helps sort of situate the work that I did in my dissertation. You've got these stages of adult development on the left here, and you've got this whole separate world of organizational development. Both are about a little over 50 years old, depending on when you start counting when they were formed. And they overlap here a bit. And there's a small slice of people that's really kind of interested in taking these stages of adult development and applying them to organizational development, which means to teams, to organizations, to collectives, really of any size, all the way on down to a dyad, like a marriage or a parent-child relationship, all the way up to teams, organizations, entire nations. There's people measuring the stage of entire nations, and then even all of humanity. So that's what this sort of slice of vertical OD is. One of the challenges that I discovered was that AD, adult development, the stages there, they're pretty good at addressing complexity capacities of single individuals. Many of you are familiar with those stages, but not really how to scale AD or develop collectives to solve more complex problems together. And I think all of us would agree that our world is, characterized by really challenging, difficult, nasty, gnarly, wicked problems. Our sort of environment and war and famine and all kinds of social injustice still persists today, and it's a real issue, and it's quite complex, and no one single person can solve it on their own. But that's really what OD does, is they figure out how to solve bigger problems with people, right? This is why people organize into organizations, is to be able to do things together that they couldn't do separately. And the art and science of OD is about how do you do that well? How do you do that properly? And so, mixing these two worlds is, again, sort of my playground, and you might be familiar with some of these names if you're familiar with adult development or org development. These are most of the leading names and the theorists, sort of in the field. And I spent a lot of time in the center there, the folks, sort of at the bottom, talking to many of them live and, of course, reading their material. My research question was this: how might an organization assess its own stage of vertical development reliably and efficiently? Assessment, I needed to create a brand new method that didn't exist. And the content of my literature review, which I can briefly review here today if you'd like, basically found that we can't really assess vertical OD very well today. And so I ended up creating a brand new method that didn't exist, which I don't recommend for a PhD student, by the way. Really hard creating a new measurement method. Vertical OD itself is not very well defined. I had to create new definitions, a whole new model so that I could measure better. And then the whole science of measurement I had to get into, which is not something that my coursework really prepared me for. That research question, in the process of answering it, it was an ambitious study, more so than I would actually, like I said, recommend for anyone. But it was. There's been a number of the theorists and the leading, sort of names in this field who have begun to use words that I couldn't believe I was hearing, like groundbreaking, huge addition to the field. You should write a book. You need to get this out in the world, kind of stuff. And I was like, really? You sure? And so what I'm preparing for is an 8-part learning series where I took most of my dissertation basically and chopped it up into these sort of 8 pieces that build on one another. I'm going to be doing one piece per week, 1 hour per piece. And so starting here in a little bit, I'm going to, sort of kick this off. We've already got over 150 people that have registered for it. And it's actually a fundraising activity to raise funds for people who tend not to have access to, these developmental solutions that we all provide. And we've already raised over $10,000. So really good interest and uptake and traction in the field. And I'm going to give you a super high level flyover in just a few minutes, and then maybe come back and see what kind of questions you have. The deck that I'm sharing has over 100 slides in it, and I'm just going to show you another 8 or 9, and then we'll come back and see what kind of questions you have. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to walk through this little summary right here. That's a high level, kind of flyover, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to ask you to throw into the chat window, which number do you want to hear more about? And then maybe we can go in drill down into some of the additional details, or maybe we just pause here and see what kind of questions you might have. Okay. So real quickly, the very first session, when I do it, is really just sort of a high level flyover. It's meant to help people understand whether or not they want to attend all 8 sessions, or is just the one enough, or do they want to skip 2, 3, and 4 because they're really interested in 5, or whatever, kind of their options there. Then in the next session, I'll work through really kind of why vertical OD is a very poorly defined field. We'll talk about a lot of the leading models that exist here, like Bill Torbert, like Spiral Dynamics, like CCL, like Frederick Laloux, and what's strong about them and also what's weak about them, particularly for measurement purposes. This next piece around number 3 zooms out. It looks at the entire field of OD, not just vertical OD, all of it, mainstream OD and everything, and says OD doesn't really have a model, a conceptual model for how teams and organizations grow and develop. It was quite surprising for me to sort of find that. We could drill into that if it interests you more. Then I took a look at how people are measuring vertical OD today, because some of the names, if you're familiar, like Torbert and Laloux, they make these confident claims that an organization is at a teal stage of organization, or at, achiever stage. And when I took a really close look at that, I saw some gaps in how that's actually being done today. And then I took a look at what actually works, mostly borrowing from the world of adult development, individual development. So ego development, cognitive complexity theory, hierarchical complexity theory, and a number of other sort of frameworks that says, okay, this is a successful way of measuring things accurately. How might we apply that to collectives? And so again, like I mentioned, I sort of invented a new method. It's a survey-based method for maximum scalability. And I found a couple surprising findings, which are listed there. The one at the sort of very bottom basically suggests that I actually didn't measure. I didn't pull off what I was trying to pull off. I measured something differently, and it just sort of shows the pervasive problem that exists here and why there really aren't any very good measures. And then I wrap up with, well, why aren't there any very good measures? It might be because our models and how we conceptualize how teams and organizations grow, our models themselves might be incomplete or inaccurate. And so I've got some work in there around that. And then I had explored a lot of territory to invent a new way that hadn't been tried yet to measure the stages of vertical development for teams and organizations. And in that process of thinking about what that new approach should look like, I uncovered all kinds of amazing opportunities and promising paths to pursue here. And then that last session, number 8, is all about stuff that no one's researched yet, that seems quite promising, and it would be great for anybody that's in this field or interested in this kind of work, particularly a PhD student, to sort of pick from a menu of offerings here, and you've got a dissertation in this field that could work for you. That's a super high level flyover. Let me sort of go back to the very top, and let's see, just kind of see what piques your interest the most, because all of these are, like I said, I'm going to have about 30 to 40 minutes of content for each one of these 8 pieces, and then we'll have some sort of open dialogue when I do the actual session. All right, so read, I saw number 3. I don't have my chat window open. Let me get that. Okay, read number 3, Astro 3, 5, and 8. Okay, anything else from anyone else? Number 2. Okay, a couple votes for number 3. Yep, super new, yeah. yeah, not a common topic for a lot of coaches, because again, this gets beyond individual one-to-one, like belly-to-belly coaching, and more around the organizational systemic impacts and sort of how you change that. Okay, good. Well, we got a couple votes for number 3, and then a few more, 2, 5, and 8. So maybe I'll jump into number 3 for a few minutes, or maybe I should pause. Is there any sort of burning questions right now, sort of after that really high-level flyover, that would be good to cover right now? All right.
You can go ahead and unmute and ask your question. You don't have to put it in the chat.
All right, so for item number 3 here, this idea that looks at all of OD, mainstream OD and vertical OD. Let's see, I'll go to basically one of the things that I did was I looked at the world of OD first, and I looked at the leading journals, and I basically did a search. I'll just go ahead and fill in the build slide here. A title search for 34 years of research and the most authoritative resources for mainstream OD. You can see the journals highlighted up there in the middle of the screen. And I did a title search with stage and organization in the title. A title search is by no means a comprehensive literature review, but again, I was searching 34 years of published research in the most authoritative sources, and I found 2 articles about organizational stages. That was, quite shocking for me. Basically, the punchline here is that mainstream OD doesn't really conceptualize the development of organizations in stages at all. So this whole idea that organizations move through stages is quite an obscure, sort of narrow field. There's not a lot of people really thinking about it. But then it raises the question, so how does mainstream OD conceptualize the development of organizations? Here's a one-pager that I could take probably 30 minutes just to walk through, but I won't. Basically, if you think about how, at the top of the screen, how does mainstream org development conceptualize the development of organizations? You look at the punchline, and it's highlighted at the bottom. They don't conceptualize it in stages. They basically say that any form of change is development, as long as it's essentially desired change or performance improves or something along those lines. Lots of different ways to conceptualize it. Those are the 4 broad categories there, sort of in the middle. But you sort of walk away going, OD is a little bit misnamed. It should be called OC. When you really look carefully at sort of the theories, at the models, at the approaches, at how they're measuring things, and so there is no developmental trajectory. There's no tie to a broader developmental, widely agreed upon set of stages, or you're more developed if you have this versus that. The closest thing was the one on the far right, which is more of a life cycle model, but that's mostly rooted in how big you are. That's an oversimplification, of course, and there's lots of theory and references in the slide notes, but that's basically kind of what I found with OD. What I also found is mainstream OD has had a lot of really close brushes with the concept of vertical complexity and vertical development, and it has consistently rejected elements from this sort of vertical and stage-based conception of development. It has literally, there's been articles written says, basically we reject these theories, which again, I was kind of surprised to find. And then when you look at vertical OD, the field that's ostensibly, trying to really measure OD in these stages, and this is a bit of a summary of the next whole segment, which is basically that even all of the methods that we use to measure vertical OD are inadequate in some way. They either work for researchers, but they're way too costly, and they can take months or years to just do one assessment. They're really inefficient. or they work for consultants. They're efficient and cheap, and you can do them at scale, but they're not reliable. They're not good measurement instruments. They don't work for research. And so there's this sort of nasty, sort of trade-off here between efficiency and accuracy. And so I had tried to build a new assessment that broke this compromise and tried to do both at the same time, and learned a lot of things by trying it really hard. I wasn't really successful, but I learned some pretty surprising and new information in the field. Let me pause there and see if there's any questions about that.
So Jimmy, hey, this is Reed. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
So I was really fascinated by the statement that there's not a lot of literature out there that talks about development stages. I found in my own research, I found that there was a lot of literature on stages, but it tended to be related directly to maturity, which is different than development and different than change. But there's a lot of different maturity models out there. Maturity models for strategy, maturity models for process. So maturity, which kind of, to me, sort of sits alongside development, but it's different. But so I'm sort of glad to hear what you said, because when I was looking, that really wasn't what I was looking at. But I remember thinking to myself, oh, I just must not be, digging in the right place, just not seeing what's probably there. I'm just not using the right inquiry, the right queries in my database queries. You know what I'm saying? So it's cool for you to say that, because that it sort of validates what I was finding when I was looking, although I was looking in a completely different area.
Yeah, and if you're familiar with the stages of vertical development, and you're familiar with one of the most common stages that most adults, frankly, are at, often called achiever or orange, that's a heavy orientation toward goals and setting and achieving goals. Hence the title, achiever. And one of the things, Reed, that I sort of discovered is when you put that framing, the stages of vertical development, you put that framing onto an entire organization. One of the things that I found was when you look at most of those models of maturity that you're describing, and the other models that I came across in my research, better equals the ability to achieve my goals. And so even though you have multiple stages of maturity, where a lot of OD people might say we've grown, we've matured, we've developed, when you look at that through the lens of vertical complexity and the stages of vertical development, you go, no. All of your stages of maturity are all still focused on goal achievement. So they all qualify as one stage of vertical OD. Does that make sense?
Yes. Oh, I'm glad you said that. And that does make sense in light of what I was also looking at. So it's a broader context. And that's nice to know. And everything I know about vertical OD, I know from your dissertation.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we covered one for Reed and one for Astrid. Erica mentioned number 2. So let's jump in there real quick. Vertical OD is a poorly defined field, and here are some ideas. Again, a really quick sort of dive into that looks at how social science at large really measures things. And one of the things I was surprised to find is that there's a great huge difference between the thing on the left and the thing on the right, and it's much easier to theorize about something than it is to actually measure that something, especially in social science, when you have a lot of latent variables that are really hard to measure. And so what is theorizing? Theorizing is just describing a thing, like the stages of development. And it's usually qualitative in nature. When you want to get quantitative now, you gotta move over there to the right. And in vertical OD, there's been far more theorizing and describing than actual measuring. And so what does that mean? Sorry, let me go back here. Torbert is really kind of the father of this field, I would say. Many would agree. here's his stages of organizational development. And we're not going to read through all of this, obviously, but you can see the stages here, and they've got this sort of thick description. It's, again, we're describing things. We're theorizing about stages of OD. Another very popular book in this field, really brought a lot of attention to this field, actually, was Frederick Laloux's Colors and these different stages here, and how organizations sort of behave in different ways. It really makes a lot of sense, and it resonates with a lot of people. You've got spiral dynamics. Many of you are also familiar perhaps with them, and also uses a color scheme to identify each stage of development. But what are you seeing? You're seeing a bunch of descriptions. And when you look at, you put all these things together, you go, what actually is being developed here through those things? You got a bunch of paragraphs, you got a bunch of thick descriptions, but what's being developed? Is it performance? Is it how well they collaborate? Is it things like social equity? Is trust being built? Inclusive behaviors, double and triple loop learning. Most of you are probably familiar with that. Is innovation getting better? Like, which of these things are actually growing? Can we say? There's really not a point of view on that. And what does vertical even mean anyway? And how's that different from horizontal? There really aren't very good answers to that. And so essentially, let me again skip ahead because I don't want to give you an hour's worth right now. I'm going to jump ahead to essentially, in order to measure well, you got to answer those three questions down there on the bottom right, and they're surprisingly deceptive. They're surprisingly difficult. What exactly are you going to examine when you want to measure something? What are you not going to examine? What's out of scope? How are you going to examine it, and how are you not going to examine it? You have to have procedures. You have to have methods that you create. Who's qualified to do the examination and render an assessment? Who's not qualified? So this sort of quantitative measurement piece has the appearance of objectivity. Oh, they're 3.4 out of 5.0, or they're stage 6 out of 7. It has the appearance of objectivity, but really, how do you get that number? There's lots and lots of subjective decisions to get there. And really, the world of AD, individual adult development, has good answers to those questions on the bottom right. So we have some fairly well methods, and they're accurate, and they're precise, and they're repeatable. Vertical OD has really no good answers to any of those questions on the bottom right. And so I had created some new definitions, a definition of vertical complexity, a definition of vertical development, and then a definition of vertical organizational development, sort of on top of that, that became a new basis, a new foundation, a new framework on which to build a new method on the right for measurement. So I couldn't just move to the right. I had to do some more foundational work on the left here. That's a super high level flyover, but just to maybe connect into something some of you might be more familiar with, you can apply the same logic to individuals. What does vertical development even mean for an individual? And many of you who are familiar, you might say, oh, we know how to do that. We know how to measure vertical development today. And if you're familiar with integral theory or others who might say there's different lines of development, even for a single person, for an individual, you look at those items over there on the right, and what you find is we don't know how to measure all the theorized lines of development. There's still a lot of theory out there that we don't know how to measure. What do we know how to measure? Well, we've got the sentence completion tests, which is the first, purplish one there, identifying identity and ego development. We know how to measure that. That's pretty good, high quality, precise things. We know how to measure meaning making and the subject-object interview. That's Bob Keegan's model. He's got a pretty good method, and it's pretty reliable. But it's just one of these pieces of human expression. There's so many more ways in which human beings can express themselves, and can we? Should we? Does it even make sense to try to measure them in a sort of a vertical sense? Like, there's not much kind of content on there. Cognition, Theo Dawson's work with the Lectica series has done some amazing work to measure cognitive complexity very precisely. Well, these are only a few ways in which human beings express themselves. So I go back even to the AD world, and I say, yeah, you've figured out how to measure the vertical complexity of some aspects of human expression, but not all. So there's still lots of room for innovation, for experimentation, and for continuing to learn. What does this even really mean, and how is it different from horizontal development? And what can we learn from that? So that's a high-level summary of topic number 2. back to the high level, 440,000 foot view. I can keep going. Astrid identified a couple other areas that she was interested in, but also want to pause here to just check in with you all and see how you're doing. I don't know if this is helpful for you or not. I know you're coaches. Some of you may not have much of an interest at all in this sort of collective level or organizational team level. So I don't want to bore you to tears either.
I think this is great, Jimmy. Thank you.
Thanks for not calling me Dr. Parker.
No, I learned my lesson.
Reed, I'll tell you, one of the, you actually don't, you may not know this, but there were lots of things that influenced the direction I ended up going for my dissertation. You were one of them, because you were the one that recommended that I read Ed Schein's book, Organizational Leadership and Culture. And I hadn't come across that book until you had recommended it. And of course, all I had to do was take a couple minutes looking at what it was, and I devoured that book. I read it multiple times, actually. And that was one of the things that helped a lot of these things crystallize and go, wait a minute, there's some gaps here. And that just sort of drew me in to this world of OD a whole lot more, and culture, and how do you actually measure that. Ed Schein's done more of that in the mainstream OD world than anyone else. And so really benefited from that. And it's just a testament, going back to the purpose of this group of people here, it's just a testament to community and how much we can really learn from one another, making connections, not just in meetings like this, but as Shanna shared, at the start of it, even virtually, online, asynchronously, to be able to share ideas and get some quick tips from other people. So love the idea of this community, and pretty much any community, particularly those that really serve you well. Love the idea of the co-creation. I think it was Lisa Elliott who just brought up a really important characteristic of community is we have to be aligned on what we're here for and what's okay and what's not okay. There's not much wrong with saying, this group here, we're going to focus on these things, and it's okay if you want to focus on something else, but let's agree to what we are going to focus on. That's been one of the issues and challenges that I've found as I've come across, sort of different groups, and this desire is good in many ways. We know it's a creative stimulant. We know that it's good for generating ideas together that no single person would ever have, sort of apart. And at the same time, if you don't have some basic guidelines for what you're trying to accomplish together, and sort of what's going to be helpful for that, and what's maybe going to diffuse the purpose of the group, that whole concept of ultra inclusion with no rules can be problematic, even to what you came here to do. And so, Lisa, I applaud your push there, and I would encourage the group here to really figure out, what are the guardrails? What's okay, what's not okay? Or maybe we say, this is okay for this channel, but not for this channel, that type of thing. So good stuff. That's my pitch. Let me do one more quick little plug here. We've got, it describes who is this for, who is this not for, this 8-part learning series, the program structure, and then all of the 8 sessions that I just sort of walked through with you. And then at the bottom, you can see here that I'm actually offering this program free of charge, but asking for people to consider donating to a scholarship. If you look at vertical development, the field of vertical development in particular, not just development writ large and all kinds of development, but specifically vertical development, adult development, human development, cognitive development, ego development, and you look at the people that are playing in that playground, they're almost all white. There's a real problem. It's actually a real problem. And you go, wait a minute, these are the people who are supposed to be, ultra inclusive and really trying to solve big problems in the world, and they're all white. I think that's a big problem. And these are people who are consultants too, and they offer some of the, I would say, highest octane developmental solutions that are available on planet Earth today. really, really, really high quality, some of the best that humans have figured out, containers for people to grow. And they're only really accessible to the relatively few human beings who can afford them. Huge problem. And so one of the reasons that I'm drawn to OD work is that it forces me to think about, how do I do development at scale? Not just for executives, not just for white people, not just for people who can afford it, but for everybody. How can we do that? How can we solve that problem? I've been at that for about 15 years now. And so anyway, already through these little contributions of $25, we've even got a little link here. You can join for free if you want to. Some people have done that, but then we've had, some $500, some $200, $100 contributions. Looks like that one's not showing right now. And we've raised over 10,000 already and still going. So cool stuff. That's what I'm up to.
Fantastic, Jimmy.
Yeah, thank you.
Congratulations.
So Jimmy, I have a quick, I don't know if this is a quick question. You can make it quick. You can make your answer quick. So you were with Home Depot for what? Over 8 years. And
about 8, yeah.
Then you moved to Kaiser, right? So what do you see for yourself as far as, like you just said to us that, hey, I'm sort of giving this research away. It'd be great if you make a donation to a scholarship, but what are you looking for your future in the discipline? You're currently working full time. Are you thinking at some point you'll transition to maybe more academic work, or are you gonna jostle? You gonna what's going to happen for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I am in the process this year of launching my own practice. And so my plan, life doesn't always follow your plans, of course, but if life follows my plan, it will be to that the job I have right now is the last job I ever have. That's sort of the goal. It might take a couple years to replace my income, 3 years. I don't know yet. We'll see. A lot of testing and learning to find product market fit for my practice. I'm actually targeting transformation executives. My background is in large organizations and bringing about change at large scales and doing executive coaching to bring about larger objectives, not just to grow the human, but help the human grow the organization. That's been sort of my frame, and so providing consulting services to those kinds of executives that have been charged by their organizations in bringing about massive change inside those organizations. Because I'm a specialist these days, not in small, tiny, incremental change, but the massive stuff, a major culture reboot, a huge different direction in business strategy, like the hard stuff that only happens like once or twice in a company's history. That's my target audience, and be providing coaching, consulting, possibly some team development work, executive teams, tightening them up, getting them, sort of functioning better. That's the whole approach. I'll probably do some speaking. I'm not that interested in an academic, credentials or professorships or anything right now.
Kind of the next generation of BPR.
VPR, I'm not sure what that is.
BPR, business process reorganization.
Okay. Yes, exactly.
Which didn't really work well. It failed a lot in a lot of places because people didn't understand the scope of change.
Yeah, and processes are one of several different levers that you have at your disposal to really enhance how human beings work together. It's an important lever, and it's often underutilized, frankly. But if you focus on that and that only, you're likely not going to get the results you want. And so it's just more holistic systems view. Some of the other levers include incentive systems. Some of them include strategy and the extent to which that's well defined and well communicated. Organizational structure is a really important lever. Talent systems, how you attract, acquire, develop talent, reward, recognize, promote. Those methods are super critical. So yeah, that's my world, is to looking at sort of a holistic look at organizations and what does it take to help them achieve their mission better.
Thank you.
All right, Kimberly, I'll turn it back over to you.
Well, well, this has been absolutely a wonderful Aloha Friday. Jimmy, I can't thank you enough. I really appreciate you coming out and regaling us with all of your wonderful dissertation information, and your work is really, really fascinating. Thank you so much. That was amazing. And Shauna Pote, thank you so much for coming out and giving us information on Fielding Connect. As always, you are appreciated. And everyone, thank you for attending today. The recording will be available shortly on the Coaching Community of Practice Basecamp website. And other than that, have a wonderful day. Thank you for attending, and aloha.
Thank you, everyone. Enjoy your weekend.